Well, hello, Oren. Thanks for joining me today on this episode of Stacked, the show for freight leaders who are interested in the role of technology and helping them improve their day-to-day decision making and, of course, make them optimized so that they're as effective, competitive, and ultimately as profitable as they can be. But before we get into today's episode, where you and I are going to talk about the role of freight technology and data to help improve and optimize freight operations, it's always important that our guests know who we're having on today. So I came across Flock Freight in my final days at Cerasis, who was an LTL 3PL. And so you guys started showing up on my radar as I started doing my own market research. So tell us a little bit about your background, Oren, and a little bit about Flock Freight.
Yeah, thanks for having me today. So I'm the founder and CEO of Flock Freight. We do algorithmic carpooling to create shared truckloads of LTL freight. So I know that's kind of a mouthful. Probably makes sense even for an audience like yours to unpack that a little bit. Basically what we do is we look for customers that have LTL shipping requirements. They're shipping 4 pallets, 6 pallets from wherever they are to wherever they need it to go. And we use algorithms and a lot of software, a lot of data science and machine learning in order to put that freight with our other customers, less than truckload shipments. And instead of moving it through the traditional LTL hub and spoke, we create shared truckloads. So for an industry audience like yours, we procure a full truckload carrier, and we have them make multiple pickups, pick up those various LTLs, drive directly to destination, make those deliveries, instead of otherwise moving that freight via the traditional LTL hub and spoke.
So some creativity in freight. Who knew that could exist, right? I came into this industry 10 years ago, didn't even know what LTL stood for, but quickly fell in love with the industry and just, the speed at which it moves, the amount of processes that occur, and how important it is to the economy. I think a lot of us really, before we got into the industry, maybe as kids, and I still try to, imbue this into my kids, the importance of trucking to our everyday lives, and we're starting to see really this focus, especially with this global pandemic that continues to endure, this focus by the public at large on the importance of supply chain and the importance of speedy delivery and customer service, whether it's the explosion of e-commerce and we're still ordering more and we're having to deal, with shipping times and on our own day-to-day lives, or whether that's a company who is seeing an extreme demand as either a freight broker or a shipper because more people are ordering different types of products these days as they stay in their homes. But all of those processes and all of that stuff to happen as efficiently as we want and the budget that we ask for, it requires that, specific special job role. And that's the role of someone who has to procure that truck and work with another entity, a carrier, to make sure it gets to its final delivery. And one of the things that I'm always, asking freight tech leaders like yourself, if I was in that position and I'm just, a smart marketer in this space, I would be super confused by what is best for me to use in the way of technology. The folks at SONAR use our data platform, carriers, brokers, and shippers, to improve their decision making on freight procurement. But once they kind of understand what the pricing looks like, what are the capacity restraints or lack thereof in specific lanes and specific markets, they've really got to pick that carrier. But before we get onto how they choose the right carrier or what that looks like and what mode is best for them, how do you, when you're talking to prospects or people in the industry, how do you get them to not feel so confused or feel daunting, the sense of daunting when it comes to using the right tools? How should they think about choosing technology today?
Yeah, and if I may, I'll circle back to what you said at the beginning of this question, which was the idea of being an essential service provider, particularly during a pandemic, and how important it is. We've always known, those of us in freight, I've been in freight for 25 years, my entire adult life, and we've always known, and I think taken a lot of pride in the tangibility of the space and what we do. This is real. This is trucks rolling down the road, men and women working super hard, literally 24/7, 365, particularly on the carrier side, but also, of course, on the brokerage and shipper and receiving side. And never has that mattered more than it has over the last 12 months, give or take, which it's crazy that we're talking about 12 months of this. we would talk about in our what became a daily all hands when we went to work from home 11 months ago, that we are bringing calm to our communities through the delivery of essential goods. And this was an internal statement. I mean, the t-shirt I'm wearing right now, on the back of it says that slogan on it. We talk about being all in here at Flock, and that, I would kind of jokingly, but not so jokingly, if we wind back the clock to Q2 of last year, the whole toilet paper shortage, I would tell the team every morning, look, we're all going through this pandemic. We're not all going through it equally. And if you really want to see a zombie apocalypse happen in this country, or in this world, let's run out of food on the grocery store shelves. The work we do matters. It's never mattered more. No one's going to know the work that we did, but we'll know. And that's not a Flock statement, that's an industry. So I just kind of want to recognize everybody, yourself, the brokers, the carriers, the drivers. I mean, boy, the drivers, right? Like my first business was full truckload carriers. I started a trucking company when I was 21, if you can imagine. That's kind of my background, and where I learned the space is from the carrier side. The work we do is just so essential. So thank you for giving me the space for that long-winded response. In terms of a complicated and competitive landscape, how do customers make buying decisions? It is complicated, and I actually want to hold us on the industry side a little bit accountable for that. I've been in freight for 25 years. I started a truckload carrier at 21. I started a full service freight brokerage when I was 27. Started now, a high flying tech company when I was, 40 something. Let's not go there, but I know freight pretty well, and I'll go to a website. I'll look at whether I'm just doing my own research or asked to advise, maybe on a venture deal. And if I spend 3 to 5 minutes on a website and I can't figure out what that person does, that's not a good thing. Probably you and I can look at a website and pretty well figure out what they do. So some of this is, we need to hold ourselves accountable for overly kind of conflating and not misrepresenting. I'm not making any claims along those lines, but not just being crystal clear in our messaging. In our case at Flock, we are a very complicated business. I mean, I've pitched this thing a zillion times. It still takes me 30 to 60 seconds to get out this idea of shared truckload. But when we go to market, when we talk to shippers, those are our customers typically, manufacturers of goods, it's pretty straightforward. We simply tell them we use, cutting edge, world-class technology that we're inventing, that we're filing patents on, to take your LTL and instead ship it as part of a truckload. Instead of using the LTL hub and spoke operator as our supplier, we will instead take your LTL and we will use a full truckload operator. I'm a big believer in plain language. We don't talk about accelerating the velocity of the supply chain with algorithmic, machine learning, AI environments. I mean, we have those conversations with investors usually, and it's all true. It is not untrue, but you really want to face the appropriate stakeholder and persona. I think as an industry, we can all do a better job, us included, of just being really plain and direct. But I think some of that too is, we're not arm waving and trying to confuse anybody or trying to overstate what we do. I think that the reason why we've been so successful and we've had the growth that we've had is because what we're doing is really resonant with the shipper. And I believe that I know the data tells me that we've established product market fit. Selling a service once is not product market fit. Having the customer come back and buy it over and over and over again, and oftentimes willing to pay us a higher price to receive shared truckload service versus traditional LTL service. And then again, when the cohorts are healthy and they keep coming back and buying over and over again, I think really speaks to that. So the go-to-market is simple for us. Yes, we use unbelievably sophisticated technology. We're happy to unpack that for a customer. And some of that depends on, if it's an SMB versus a middle market versus an enterprise class customer. They're different conversations. But at the end of the day, the one thing we want to come clear is we're going to take your LTL and we're going to move it as part of a shared truckload. And I think that's a really simple, powerful, and resonant statement.
Yeah, pragmatism, right? And I have to be reminded about that all the time. And that's kind of why I like coming from outside the industry. And maybe I'm an insider 10 years in now, but I've never forgotten that sense of, wait, what does this mean? Why are you doing that? How does this connect to this? And technology is a great enabler. Don't get me wrong, but it also should just be something, and I don't want to simplify it and say it should be an easy button, but at the end of the day, once you're onboarded and using it, it should improve your job. It should improve your lives. It should improve your outcomes. And I think what you're hitting on here is something that us technology providers, it is incumbent upon us to say, hey, here's how you use it for X, Y, and Z. Whether that's very specialized in one process or it involves a suite of processes, as we see, the explosion of some of these huge single source of truth platforms that are, have a really cool fancy phrase, I think, in Gartner, multi-enterprise supply chain business network, which sounds really, really cool, right? To us, maybe insiders, but to that end user, they're just trying to procure freight at a good price and at a good service level so that their end customer gets it on time. A carrier is just trying to make sure they're utilizing all of their resources, all of their assets, because they have capital expenditures into these trailers and they need to make sure they're used to the best of their ability. And oh yeah, all of those people have to come together and do it seamlessly. So let's talk about this a little bit. Is the freight procurement professional, or those of us in freight, going to have to get really good at data science, or should the technology do that so that we don't necessarily have to be data experts? Because I worry about that. What do you think, Oren?
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think it done right. I think you mentioned just previously that the technology is an enabler. We at Flock, we don't sell the technology, we sell the solution. So when we approach a shipper as a customer and give them kind of the pitch, this is what we do, the why needs to come through. What is vaguely interesting? The why. So for any shipper that has shipped, and this is the majority of shippers, I would argue, if they've shipped both LTL and truckload, when we approach them and say, your freight was kind of born with the DNA of LTL, but we're going to change its DNA and we're going to turn it into a truckload, more specifically a shared truckload, because it's going to ride share with other LTL freight. We don't have to spend a lot of time on how we do that, but we do want to make sure we spend a lot of time on the why. And the why is, the claimed LTL industry pickup and delivery statistics versus the claimed truckload on-time pickup, on-time delivery are just wildly different. The truckload industry is simpler in concept. It's very hard in execution, obviously, but the shipper understands, if I ship it truckload with you or shared truckload with you, I'm just more likely to have my freight pick up and deliver on time. I'm more likely to have a damage-free experience. Unfortunately, the LTL conundrum can create a lot of damage because of the handling. When you're breaking those things down, moving through terminals. I always remind people, as a freight guy, I'm not maligning the industry. This is the industry I live in. That it's not that it's people who care more in the truckload industry versus the LTL industry. It's not a higher level of competency. It's not that. It's not even the technology between the industries. It's the mousetrap. The mousetrap in truckload is relatively straightforward, and the mousetrap in LTL is obviously a lot more complex. So, we make sure that they understand the why that we do these things from a consuming procurement. I think that it's incumbent upon us to make sure that this is always understandable, simple to take in, and enables the customer to make an appropriately informed buying decision. If we get into this is what we really do. We work in futures and probabilities. We have machine learning environments that estimate the underlying truckload cost. We slice it into per cost linear feet. We then do a probability assessment on the Tetris puzzle that is LTL and whether these things are going to come together, not just in origin and destination zones, but along the route. I mean, we have a team of data scientists and mathematicians and PhDs. The work they do is so complex. In imagining what the future may look like. I just don't think any of it's relevant to the shipper. I think what's relevant to the shipper is we're going to use extraordinary cutting edge technology. I think that's important to share that, if not chant that. And at the same time say, what we're going to do is we're going to have a 53 footer come in, a truckload provider, and you're going to share it because you should only pay for the portion of that big truck that you use. Conversely, if you're paying for a full truckload and you're not loading it up full, you shouldn't pay for the whole truckload. In our case, you should pay for roughly the share that you use, the pro rata share, the proportion of the truck that you use. Let us worry about the rest. Flock is in the business of putting things with things. That's kind of what we do. We can put small things with big things, medium things with medium things, every permutation you can imagine. I fear, though, that a go-to-market of enormous complexity, again, as freight experts, when we look at people's go-to-markets, when we take in their websites and we don't understand what they do, it makes me cringe as to how they're going to sell that into the marketplace.
That's why, one of the biggest things, at least in my discipline of marketing, and I think it goes hand in hand with these, freight tech leaders who kind of need to have that product market fit, but then also be able to consistently message to those potential buyers, this is how you use it, that you have to really start saying, what is my actual intended customer's problems? What are they facing today? You know, what are the industry constraints? What are their own philosophical constraints? What are their internal company constraints? And some people are sitting there saying it shouldn't be this hard. Why should I have to pay this much for a whole truckload and not just share it with somebody else? And I'm sure that's a statement that many people have made. Like, why am I spending $3,000 for a whole truck and I have to work to fill up a whole truck? You know, and I think when that's the case, as we see when we get, you know, a huge box with a toothpaste in it from a retailer in e-commerce, or maybe we see, and our children are challenging us and asking us, why are there so many trucks on the road? Do we need so many trucks? We start really thinking maybe even a bigger picture here, right? Not only are we solving the industry's maybe core problems who have those, you know, should statements and challenges, but maybe we're also helping solve some bigger problems. And I think one of the biggest things that are going to be in front of us, and especially with a new administration who is going to probably double down on renewables and a focus on emissions, you know, I think a big part of what we can do as technology leaders is think bigger for maybe an altruistic endeavor. And I think that's some of the benefits that you guys are really providing with this interesting shared truckload model. And that's more sustainable green shipping that reduces emissions. So how are you guys focusing on that at Flock Freight? Because I find that very interesting.
Yeah, so there's two ways of thinking about it. We have two products here. The first one we launched about 5 years ago was this idea of taking little things and putting them together into shared truckloads. Quite simply stated, taking LTL and pooling them with other LTL shipments and then procuring that big truck. And that in and of itself is enormously efficient from a sustainability standpoint, because if you imagine in the LTL paradigm, again, people working really hard, you know, great technology, you know, from a kind of asset infrastructure standpoint. You do have a lot of trucks kind of roaming around, making pickup and delivery, going back to a terminal, going in and out of that hub, loading up trucks, driving to the next terminal, breaking things down, and kind of lather, rinse, repeat, right? It's definitely not as efficient from like a CO2 and carbon emission standpoint as simply saying, I'm going to load it up in LA and drive straight to Chicago. But again, what are you going to do? If you only have 4 pallets, you don't want to pay for an entire full truckload. That would be enormously wasteful from an economic standpoint and also inefficient. You'd have the big truck rolling down the road, not full. The second product we launch is that idea of customers who pay for full trucks that aren't totally full. It's a real thing in the industry. It's difficult to know how often that's going on. We believe it's you know, like maybe up to a third of the time where trucks are paid full but not loaded full. Now that may mean 1 open pallet position out of 26, but you know what? It could mean 10 open pallet positions. The reality is, for simple math, if an LTL shipper gets a full truckload about half full, then economically it might kind of break even, and it might not cost them more than shipping an LTL. They hate seeing a truck go down the road half empty. That doesn't feel good, but you're probably getting better quality. It's going to pick up and deliver on time, no damage, no loss and theft, because the truckload mode just doesn't have any of those challenges. So what we do is we make sure that the shipper only pays, and we do 2 things on that front. One is to make sure the shipper only pays for the amount of truck that they load and use, all the way to the point of shipping. We call it a prebate instead of a rebate. We give you money back after the fact. We'll have a rate locked in, $1,000 to move a truckload. They find out, oh, I'm shipping the truck right now, I'm loading it, I've only got it 2/3 full. We will contractually say, no problem. We will lower your price by 15%. You can imagine the shippers looking at that and going, wow, I was going to pay full price to anyone and everyone, including you, and you're now willing to just lower that price? And we say, absolutely. There's one catch. We're turning it from a truckload into a shared truckload. So we reserve the right to put other things with it. Now, we still have to pick it up and deliver on time, right? Nothing can change. It'll always be what we call hubless. We're never going to unload it. It's never going to go through a terminal. We do a virtual consolidation, so to speak, in the cloud with algorithms and technology. But we are going to put other people's freight on board with this. That's also obviously much less wasteful. In theory, there's less trucks on the road, less miles being driven, because every truck that rolls is full. The carriers also benefit from it, because if you flip what I just said over, they're booking loads from shippers paid full that aren't full. They're only 2/3 full. And we can partner with them transparently to all parties and say, let's get you loaded up full. Let's make this the most profitable load you've ever hauled, because you made your full margin. You already paid full, but we can throw another $1,000 of revenue on board in a way that will not adversely impact the commitments you've made to your customer, the shipper who loaded you. In doing so, something we're really proud of, we're the only certified B Corp in freight. So B Corp certification is way harder than I thought. You know, you and I know on the marketing side, there's a lot of great credentials out there that sound pretty great, and then you unpack them, and you're like, it's probably not that hard to achieve. In this case, we approached B Corporation and said, hey, look, we've got a sustainability model here that's, we believe a 40% reduction in greenhouse gas. It's amazing. Their response, understandably so, was sort of, wait, you're the trucker, in kind of simplistic terms, you're the bad guy. Why would we bring you into the B Corp? We like Patagonia and Tom's and, firms like that. And my response was kind of like, hey, wait a second here. Let's be fair. I'm sure you enjoy eating food. And so a truck brought you that food. So let's calm down just a little bit here, number one, respectfully. Number two, it's all about the fact that if we agree that trucks are absolutely essential, no ifs, ands, or buts, then it's about who can do it most efficiently. Do we have a model that is much more sustainable than every other model out there? And we had to go back and forth. And in the end, we achieved that B Corp status. And it's been pretty transformational. It's been transformational for our team here, the flockers, as we affectionately call ourselves. We feel really proud that we think of it as social enterprise. We can build a very big business, quite frankly, a very valuable business, a business that provides essential services, improve quality for our customers, save them some money, improve the carrier and the driver's income earning opportunity, and kind of do our part to save the world. I mean, that's why we work the long days that we do, filled full of the passion and vigor that we have, is you can do right by your community, your country, and at the same time make money and build something really valuable and provide a really high quality essential service.
Hey, it's creativity and innovation at its finest, and it's simply just taking what you're hearing from the marketplace and your own experience, and how we can not only improve processes and help people save money, but make something bigger of it. And you're absolutely right, it's all essential. And if we want to make a difference, we've got to think differently. But in an industry that's kind of traditionally really been set in its ways, are you, and I feel like I'm seeing this. I think technology providers now understand that we're not here to win on the supply side or the demand side. We're here for everybody to win, that we can't have this zero-sum game, and brokers aren't out to get carriers and push them to help a margin, and shippers aren't out to push brokers just to book my load at all costs. That we're starting to have more conversations. But I have to think that the only way we're able to even have these strategic conversations is because each cohort, each segment of this freight market industry is really starting to understand that technology is a great augment to human capital. It's not a replacement of anyone. In fact, we have a lot to work on, a lot of waste in the industry. And in order to really, start having those substantial conversations, technology should be an enabler of collaboration. Now, again, as a marketer, I hate to get into that, trap of using that kind of fat word, but the more that the industry players talk to each other, and the less it's, this zero-sum game mentality, which may have been true in the past, the more we're going to move things forward, get creative, get innovative and strategic. So have you seen, between your carrier partners and the brokers maybe who are involved and the shippers, are you seeing increased collaboration thanks to technology?
Yeah, absolutely. We here call it the machine-human interface. We think about it internally in terms of the composition of our team. We're about 50-50. Data scientists, engineers, product people, mathematicians, operations research experts, like really hardcore tech. And then we're about 50% hardcore freight. Really smart, talented freight folks. And it's how we bring together the machine-human interface. We talk about feed the robot. That's bring in what we call poolable freight, LTL partials, or truckloads that turn out to not be, full. Let what is known as the optimization engine, all the algorithmic work. That's the robot, in the middle of it. The dynamic pricing engine, all the machine learning and data science of predicting the future of what other bits of freight are going to be ordered and going in and out of our data sets at any given time. Interfacing with products like SONAR and DAT as well, and getting kind of like, what does the rest of the world think is happening right now? We're much more reliant upon our own internal data, though, to shape all these outcomes, because our data sets at this point are thick enough for us to do so. But then you got to deploy it into the real world, and the real world is human beings. There's no doubt about it. And then where it gets really hard is, okay, as flockers, we wear the t-shirts, we're all in, we chant, we're inspired about, the work that we do. But then there's a big change behavior phenomena, and it's hard. It's super hard what we do, because we're not simply taking a full truck, a full load, and an empty full truck and matching them together digitally. We are building shared truckloads out of LTL. So there are many different customers that are sharing that truck. There are many different receivers that are sharing that truck. The truck driver, by definition, has to make multiple pickups and multiple deliveries, which isn't unheard of by any stretch, but it's not the norm, right? The norm is single pick, single drop, sometimes even drop and hook, right? Where they just pick up a trailer in the middle of the night, sign the paperwork, and head down the road. So for our model to work, we have to change behavior. And if you're going to change behavior successfully, in my experience, you have to change incentives. You got to rewrite the script. So to simply think about shoving a square peg through a round hole, what is it? The definition of madness is repeating the same behavior and expecting a different outcome. It isn't going to work, right? So what we do is we think through incentives. What are the wedges of success here? Customer delight. Can we give the customer a product they've never had before? They're willing to change the way they behave. Happily. It's not easy, but they do so because they know that we're giving them a level of quality they've never had before. Supplier surplus is the notion of, to your point, don't just squeeze the carrier for a penny less, penny less, penny less. It's just a zero-sum game. How can we make them better? How can we make them richer? How can we increase their efficiency and their profitability? But in a human way, human and robot, machine-human interface. Can we unlock and create real value for our investors in a way that hasn't been done before? The change behavior piece is by far the hardest. I'm really fortunate as a founder. We're a SoftBank backed business. It's just a huge stage and platform that we play on now. I get to meet a lot of interesting people. And one of the most common questions I'm asked is, what keeps you up at night? It's kind of a standard venture question. And a lot of times what you hear is, well, I got to hire a lot of talent, got to hire a lot of engineers. I got to grow revenue at astronomical rates. And when the question comes to me, I'm like, yes, sure. I'm not arguing with any of those things. What really keeps me up at night? We're trying to change the world. We have to change behavior. That's really hard. That is more art than science in my experience. The science is understanding to change behaviors, you have to change incentives. You have to change the framing and how people think about it. The technology is transformative. Think about what Uber does on the consumer side. Uber Pool and Lyft Line is their carpooling product. We call it constraints. You have a search space, which means you're going to put a pickup in LA with a pickup in LA. That's kind of how you would want to create a carpool of humans or freight. You would not want to put a pickup in LA with a pickup in Chicago, right? Like that's not a very efficient carpool. Wouldn't work. So you constrained the search space geographically. We do that too. But Uber and Lyft, again, not Uber Freight, but Uber Consumer, they do not have to constrain for our gender, our height, our weight, our eye color, hair color. They don't constrain if we're right or left-handed. They don't constrain for if we sit in the front seat or back seat, what side of the road we get on. They don't think about any of those things. We're human widgets within those algorithmic constraints. But think about what Flock Freight has to do algorithmically. Length, width, height, weight, density, SIC code, NMFC code, the value, replacement value. We have to think about compatibility of freight, hazmat, reefer, food grade. We have to think about all those things. And then where the math really blows up on you is we have to put those things into what's called LIFO, or last in, first out sequencing on the trailer, because our promise to the customer is it's hubless. So the first thing that goes on is the last thing off. The last thing that goes on is the first thing off. When you merge those two variants together, the combinatorics, the number of solutions, the number of pools that comes out is astronomical, and it can't be solved with more hardware. It's not go to the Amazon cloud and spool up some more, server capability. It is solved through better math, and more data. And the data comes from the customer, comes from the carrier, and we train those machine learning models and we train those algorithms, and they get smarter and smarter and more efficient. The tech that we're building a multi-billion-dollar tech company just in a hard tech standpoint. And then we're simultaneously building a multi-billion-dollar freight company, freight brokerage, that we don't have the luxury, and luxury is a little unfair, it's pejorative, but we can't simply take freight on anywhere and buy and sell freight. Again, an LTL shipment in LA and an LTL shipment in Chicago does us no good. We need two shipments in LA, both going to Chicago, or somewhere along that route. Maybe it's stopping in Salt Lake or Kansas City or something along those lines. So the challenges in what we do are really, really astronomically hard, but it's the value creation, which is what inspires us.
That's right. And I think, we have that struggle at Sonar as well. Our goal, like yours most likely, is to get the most complete data sets that we can capture, right? Because we need to be both complete. We also need to be both precise at the same time and accurate, because as we're helping people, especially shippers who are going out with RFPs or carriers, put everything together as far as what is the market volatility, how does the spot market impact this annual RFP or maybe this mini bid, depending on the volatility at the time of the market. We have to be able to tell our customers we have brought in all of the data sets that are needed, whether it's your own historical data or paid rate data and paid invoice data in your specific segment, because freight is so different, whether you're in automotive or CPG or retail, or, how we can maybe even bring in algorithmic market data with all of the other billions of dollars of data we have in truckload. The customer needs to have a feeling of comfort that the decisions that you're helping them make are backed by that powerful technology and is accurate. And so as we head into 2021, I think that's the term, uncertainty, right? We're trying to bring certainty in a time of uncertainty, both of our companies, Sonar and Flock Freight, so that our customers' jobs are easier, so that they can meet their freight budgets that they expect, so that they can find capacity again and again, and so that their carrier partners feel like they're working with somebody who's collaboratively a part of that process, not just trying to squeeze them, and that carriers feel like they're also staying profitable. So when we head into 2021, as people listen to this podcast, Oren, what would you tell them that might be a good point of focus over the next 6 to 12 months in order for them to feel like they can get some certainty around this freight market using technology?
Yeah, it's a good question. There is a lot of volatility right now. There's no doubt about it. I guess I would want everybody to really think through, what are they optimizing for? So from my experience, particularly in building a business, when you try to optimize for too many variables at once, you pretty much always fail. It just doesn't work. The more uncertainty you have, the more volatility that exists in a market, the more I think you need to really choose what's our North Star. What do I really need? If I'm a shipper, is it on-time delivery? That matters to me more than anything else. Is it getting it picked up on time? Is it the avoidance of damage? Is it choosing the right partner? How do I make the most informed buying decision? But really kind of bear down and focus on, what is it you really need from a carrier perspective. Some carriers are fighting to live another day right now. Others are harvesting. It really depends on kind of where you are in the stack. But I would encourage everybody. I mean, this is just sort of, business 101. Know what you're pulling toward. Don't run away from things, run toward them. So, if you're running towards something, you really got to know what that optimization is. You really have to know what your North Star is. We've got, we just raised a boatload of money. We've got a big balance sheet. The temptation is there. I think of myself as an artist. I could go after 12 different things right now in ways that we couldn't have a few years ago. What are we doing? We're just going to stick with this one really big idea. We're tripling down on it. We're going to invest in our technology. We're going to invest in our people and the machine-human interface and make sure that we get just this one thing right, because it's that's a couple $100 billion opportunity. It's a very big space. Fortunately for us, our customers are telling us in the most important way, not by giving us a try, but by coming back and buying again and again and again, and by growing their relationship with us, that we're able to provide them a level of quality and a solution that they haven't had access to. Customers always tell us, like, this is such a simple idea. We've been waiting for this. We kind of knew it would happen someday. People within the LTL community tell us the same thing. I mean, it's a huge compliment, right? And at the same time, I'm like, oh, this is not simple. Like, this is so complicated. Well, it is simple.
Well, and it sounds like you're ready to focus, and I think that's what everybody else should do. If something's working, or it's something that, hey, you've systemized and you've scaled, yeah, if you're an artist and you're creative and you like to get your hands into a lot of things, it may feel boring because it's right, but don't be scared of being right and go after being right and double down on it. Well, Oren, I can't thank you enough for your unique perspective and thoughts, telling us a little bit about the Flock Freight model today and how, your customers are really loving that model, and how your people really are, the flockers out there in their machine-human interface environment making a difference. So thanks for coming on Stack today. Really enjoyed our time, and I hope you have a good rest of your year, and good luck to everybody at Flock Freight.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.
All right, take care.
Thanks, you too.